Evening approached with a kind of slow inevitability, as though the sky itself hesitated before surrendering to the advancing night. The fortress, which had endured the weight of a restless dawn and an uneasy day, now braced for something heavier. The changing light cast long beams across the courtyard, stretching shadows in unnatural directions. It felt as if the walls themselves attempted to warn the men within them. Though none could decipher the message, the air grew colder. Slipping into armored joints and under collars, carrying with it the strange metallic taste of tension, men shifted uneasily at their posts, sensing the approach of another night, unlike any they had known. The previous night had stolen their certainty. This one threatened to steal their resolve, in a narrow corridor. The scent of extinguished lamps lingered, faint smoke mixed with oil, clinging stubbornly to the walls. The stone had absorbed too much over the years, whispers of betrayal, heavy footfalls, quiet decisions, unspoken confessions. Tonight, it absorbed even more. Every sound, every breath, every heartbeat seemed to sink into the stone, as though the fortress were gathering the pieces of a story that had not yet revealed its ending. Outside the main gate, the sky deepened into a bruised shade of purple. A thin layer of frost formed on the iron hinges, even though winter was still days away. It was not a natural chill. It was the coldness of something unseen, something that moved without form, something that breathed in the silence between breaths. Men lit torches along the walls, each flame rising reluctantly. The fire crackled softly, feeding off the dry wood, but the warmth it produced seemed unable to penetrate the air. It hovered in place like a caged glow, flickering but never spreading. The torches lined the battlements like watchful eyes, illuminating a landscape that felt both familiar and foreign. In the barracks, some soldiers attempted to rest, but sleep refused them. The unease coiled within their chests like a tightening knot. The events of the previous night had left a residue that stirred in their minds, images of shadows where none should have been, echoes that did not belong to their own movements, and an unseen presence that seemed to slip past their senses like a silent wind. A few tried to speak of what they felt, but their words drifted into the air without finding answers. Fear that cannot be named is fear that grows, and tonight it grew like a vine of smoke weaving through the fortress in a darkened chamber. The footprint discovered earlier still waited, untouched by boot or broom. The dust surrounding it bore the marks of age and stillness. Yet the indentation itself was fresh to fresh. The shape was precise, the weight distribution clear. Whoever had left it had not been running. They had been standing still, observing, watching, choosing. The footprint did not simply reveal presence, it revealed intention. As the light faded, the fortress seemed to inhale sharply, as if preparing itself for what the night would demand of it. The dogs near the stable doors curled tighter into themselves, their bodies trembling with an instinctive dread. Their eyes, reflecting the last sliver of daylight, shifted repeatedly toward the inner walls. Something waited there. Something patient. Something aware night finally arrived. It descended not as a blanket, but as a tide, slow, heavy, and unyielding. It seeped into corners and crevices, claiming every inch of darkness. The fortress surrendered to it, though unwillingly, as though resisting a force too ancient to defy. The first sign of the night's intentions came as a vibration soft, almost imperceptible. It traveled through the floor stones, brushing against boots and armor. Some men paused, unsure if they had imagined it. Others ignored it, too weary to trust their instincts. But the vibration returned, stronger, clearer. As though the earth beneath the fortress shifted in response to an unseen step, the wind picked up, carrying with it the faintest whisper, so faint it might have been mistaken for a loose thread brushing against fabric. But the sound repeated itself, circling the courtyard, weaving through the torchlight like a living thing. None could name it. None dared to. From the high tower, a watchman gazed into the distance. The horizon was empty, but the atmosphere pulsed with tension. The valley, usually alive with the distant sounds of nature, lay strangely silent. No wind rustled leaves. No bird cried out. No creature moved. The world outside had paused, as if bracing for something approaching in the dark. Down in the storage corridor, a faint disturbance stirred. Dust motes rose in thin spirals, catching the flicker of nearby lamplight. The air thickened, heavy with the sensation of presence. The walls, cold and rigid, seemed to contract subtly as if recoiling. A single wooden crate shifted, its corner scraping softly against the floor. No hand had touched it. The sound traveled through the corridor, like a ripple through still water. A figure passing nearby froze, gripping the hilt of a weapon, though no enemy stood before him. The silence that followed was sharper than the noise itself. It pressed against the ears until the heartbeat became the only sound that made sense. Further inside, training grounds remained deserted, the sand untouched since dawn. Yet a faint trail appeared as though something light had brushed over it, too light to be human, too deliberate to be random. The trail led toward the central courtyard, then vanished abruptly, leaving behind only the unsettling certainty that something moved without being seen. On the upper level, the shadow who had navigated the fortress the previous night continued to move. His presence blended seamlessly with the darkness. Every step measured, every breath controlled, every motion calculated. He had waited for nightfall, for the moment when the fortress sank fully into silence. Now, his work continued. He passed through a narrow archway where the stone walls bore ancient carving symbols, forgotten by most who lived within the fortress. The carvings caught the torchlight as he moved, their edges casting thin lines across his path. For a heartbeat, the light revealed the faintest reflection in his eyes, a reflection not of fear, but certainty. Deep in the fortress, a low humming sound began. It was not mechanical. It was not natural. It was the sound of tension reaching its breaking point, vibrating through corridors, through chambers, through every space touched. By the night's unease, the humming stopped abruptly. A louder sound followed. A thud. Something heavy had fallen, or been dropped, or pushed. The fortress awakened fully. Men rushed toward the noise, confusion tightening their faces. Torches swung wildly in hands that shook not with exhaustion, but with dread. Their steps echoed unevenly as they approached the inner wall where the sound had originated. There, in the dim light, they found something that made their breath catch. A storage door slightly open, its lock broken cleanly. It's not forced with chaos, but removed with precision. The darkness behind the door felt deeper than the rest of the fortress, as though hiding a secret that had woken too soon. The torchlight flickered, bending around the edges of the room inside. Shadows clung to the ceiling like silent creatures waiting for movement. What the men saw next stole the warmth from their blood. There, on the floor, lay a second footprint, clear, deliberate, fresh. Exactly like the one found earlier, but pointing in the opposite direction. A message, a sign, a warning. The shadow was not escaping. The shadow was circling. The fortress, now fully aware, seemed to vibrate with the realization. The night tightened its grip. The air thinned. The men at the doorway exchanged silent breaths, understanding not through explanation, but through instinct that the night had drawn its line, and the story, like the darkness itself, had only begun to open.